we go. All right. Well, of course, now I'm the big picture, and that moved. Ay, ay, ay. So you get to see me twice. Yeah. Um, so hey everybody, this is Michael Goldberg, and welcome to the LinkedIn Live Lunch Hour. Today I've got a great guest, a good friend, all around good guy and recruiting rock star, Dan Lockhart. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How's everything going?
It's good, man. It's great. I'm doing well.
You enjoying the great weather we're having?
Yeah, it's been incredible so far. I'm also incredibly excited about the shortened week because of President's Day yesterday, so that's
So
nice.
were you off yesterday?
So the company that I'm doing consulting for, they were off in the U.S., but I ended up I had some calls scheduled, so I went ahead and did them. But it was a lighter day than normal. So
Oh well, that's good. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
So all right. Well, we're going to talk about a myriad of things today, and the one of them is going to be. We're going to talk about recruiting. We're going to talk about recruiters and candidates and applicants, and really understanding the basis behind that. We're going to talk about how recruiting has changed so much. But kind of before we start to dive into the questions, why don't you tell the lovely audience about yourself, what you do, who Calibra is, and what you're doing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a senior technical recruiter and engagement leader for an RPO company called IQ Talent Partners. My current assignment is for a data governance company, data intelligence company called Calibra. And obviously, the majority of the roles that I'm recruiting for are technical in nature. A director of the data office, cloud operations, machine learning, those sorts of roles, which are all pretty difficult skill sets to find. Thankfully, I have some good sourcing support right now. So.
Absolutely. Well, shout out to Cindy Davis and her team. And for those of you on the broadcast paying attention, listening, feel free to comment. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to like and share that we are live on LinkedIn. So, all right. So let's kind of dive in here. Let's talk about the state of recruiting right now. What's kind of your thoughts on that? I mean, because really, I've got my own thoughts, which I'll share, but I want you to go first. Kind of, what do you think the state of affairs are for recruiters, whether they're agency, RPO, or corporate in-house?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure which angle you're going at there, but I can tell you, for recruiters, it is an incredibly tough industry right now. The market is super hot. I don't think anybody would argue that it's definitely a candidates market right now. And so, especially with technical talent, and that's really where I'm going to have the most visibility. It's really difficult to find candidates, but more importantly, find candidates who are interested, right? So yeah, I mean that's where I would say the market is in relation to how difficult it is to recruit for technical talent. And then as far as recruiters as a whole, just the reputation of recruiters, it's kind of gotten to a point to where sometimes it feels like there's more bad recruiters than there are good recruiters, and so that just makes our jobs that much more difficult. I got an email not even 10 minutes ago from somebody trying to recruit me for an engineering role, right? So it's like that's silly, right? You've got to put more effort into it.
And like a real engineering role?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Where did they see engineering in your background?
Oh, I'm sure there was some sort of keyword with C# or engineer or network engineer or something on my LinkedIn profile that stood out to them. So.
Oh, if the money's good. Just kidding.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
it's always going to be good in engineering, but yeah, I don't have the technical chops for that for sure.
Absolutely. Hello, Bobby Sue Rogers, right? Do you know Bobby Sue? She's good. She's out of Atlanta.
It doesn't ring a bell right off the top of my head, but that doesn't.
You should go to SourceCon and maybe you'd meet some of these famous chaps
Yeah,
and ladies.
yeah. No, that's definitely on my list. It's a great event. It's for me right now. It's cost prohibitive, And Cindy always says, "Oh, we have to write 6 articles." I'm like, "Yeah, Cindy, that takes a lot of time." So
Six articles for you to attend? No.
you get a free ticket. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, oh, that's not true. So Bobby Sue says we have to pay attention to who we strategically target, and I
Mhm.
think that's so spot on. You know, I'm going to say that I agree with you. Uh, from a state of affairs, I think that recruiting is right now getting beat up. I think HR is getting beat up as well, and I think it boils down to three reasons. Number one, recruiters are lazy. Number two, recruiters and how are they lazy? Well, they don't try to learn the business that they're supporting. They don't try to build relationships with the hiring managers, and they don't they don't really understand the positions they're recruiting for, and they don't know how to engage candidates, or they don't want to know how to engage the candidates um, in the proper way. And message, as Bobby Sue says, messaging is totally everything, right? And so, when you're reaching out to folks, what are some of the things that you do as a recruiter? I talked with Aaron Matthews last week, who is a sourcer and recruiter, and she's really good at it. But what are some of the ways that you engage your candidates out there?
Yeah, I love that question because I, I I don't know that everybody does this, but a lot of times I take a shot. Like I'll just the purpose of my messaging is not to qualify a candidate for a role. The purpose of my messaging is just to engage somebody, right? So it's the same. Similarly to, I tell candidates that the purpose of their resume is not to get them a job. The purpose of their resume is to get them an interview with the hiring manager, and then you get the job from that conversation, right?
Right.
So I just want engagement. Now I'm not going to do the whole smoke and mirrors play. Like I'm not going to be completely off topic. But I am going to be goofy in my messaging when time allows. So this I hope this story.
Goofy. Give me an example of
Yeah,
goofy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I hope this story. This is another example of how it's taking a shot, right? Because
Right.
there are people watching this may or may not know what I'm talking about. But I was reaching out. This was a while ago. I was reaching out to some candidates from Sabre, and I don't know if you ever watched The Office. The Office actually ends up getting bought by Sabre.
Yeah.
Dunder Mifflin is bought by Sabre, and so
Not
Andy.
Sabre, the airline management company.
Right. No, 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 no. Yeah, it's Sabre. Yeah. So anyway, so Andy ends up creating a song called Dunder Mifflin and Sabre. So in my messaging to this candidate, I said, "Hey, I said, I just wanted to reach out. I really loved your profile." Anyways, I talked a little bit about about her experience, and then I said, I have to admit, I'm a little bit annoyed that Andy from The Office is going to be in my head all day singing Dunder Mifflin, the Dunder Mifflin and Sabre song. And then she responded with, "This is the best outreach I've ever gotten from a candidate." And then she recited the entire song to me in the LinkedIn message.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which was amazing, right? Because she
How
got.
did you know? How did you know she was? Did
I
you know
did.
she was in
I
office?
didn't. No, I didn't, and that's the point, right? Is that I'll take shots, and I mean, it's sometimes that you just look like a complete doofus, right? But other times you get this real connection with somebody, and so I really like doing that. I really like coming up with creative ways to message people. Now, it's important to say, you can't do that with every candidate, right? So typically, when I'm sourcing, or when sources have supported me and shown me some candidates, they'll kind of they'll give me a list, and then I kind of go through there, and I find what's called, what I call the diamond candidates, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I have 100 profiles, I'll pick out 20 that are just spot on, right? And then I focus on those people, and I do hyper personalized messages, right? So
Do you do it in mass, or do you do? Sorry to interrupt. Do you do it in mass, or do you do it one off and customize each letter to, or
with
each note?
with the diamond candidates, I definitely customize more, right? In mass, there's still an element of customization, but it's not to the degree that I do the diamond candidates. So I don't ever send out mass messages that say, "Hey, we're hiring for engineering, please apply." Like, to me, that's just silly, right? I mean, you're looking at like horrible return odds on that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I will try to say things like, hey, I noticed your experience in XYZ at, let's just say C sharp or Java, right, at XYZ company, matches what we're looking for. Would you be interested in further discussions about this role, right? So that's hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, what's a diamond candidate? Kind of give the audience a preview. Like in your mind, does that mean that they're from your target companies, they have the target skills, the technologies, everything that you're looking for? What's your definition?
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So you run across so many profiles, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's resumes, whether it's whatever, where people don't always talk about every single skill that they use, and then of course you have some where they talk about every single skill that was ever invented, and they don't use more than 10% of them. But my point is based on looking at someone's profile alone, I can see that there is a very high probability that that candidate is a match for the role that I'm recruiting, short of just saying, oh, okay, they've worked with similar technologies.
That's awesome. So Bobby Sue, she's very active today, which I love. She goes, I customized to each candidate in the TSSCI FSP system engineers. I have no idea what that means. Do you know what she's talking about?
I don't know. I mean, short of the word engineers.
Yeah, I get system engineers. So Bobby Sue, do us a favor. I should invite you to the broadcast. You could tell us that. We could
Yeah,
have three
that's
people on.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But do tell the audience what TSSCIFSP means, which would be great. Because a lot of our group members that are on there, some may be candidates, some may be who are engineers who may understand that. But there's some recruiters that don't do the technical recruiting. So, when you are looking, the tools that you use, what are some of your go-to recruiting tools that you like to use?
Yeah, great question. I know, I'm sure I'll probably, if Mike ever watches this, Mike Cohen watches this, he'll probably give me some crap for it. I like LinkedIn, whether you have a recruiter seat or not. I like low-hanging fruit, and LinkedIn is low-hanging fruit. Now, for engineering, I like to use GitHub. I like to use Seek Out. I like to use, I like to use Reddit, honestly. I mean, there's all sorts of, there's HackerRank, there's a lot of different engineering kind of niche sites where engineers talk to each other. And if you're transparent, then usually they're fairly accepting. But when you try to hide who you are, or the smoke and mirrors thing, then it doesn't work out really well, right? So I like creative avenues and different avenues, and honestly, that changes as frequently as tech does, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to kind of, if you're a technical recruiter for 3 years and then you take time off for 2 years, you could basically have to relearn everything again.
Yeah. She said it's top secret, highly cleared, full scope poly with system engineers.
Okay.
So she does some recruiting for a very, very, very secretive governmental agency where she said she wanted to recruit you as a spy for the CIA.
Okay.
No. So it's interesting. So I can do a screen share. We could try to do this because I'd love to see how, and she asked us, how do you, Eric Strano, thank you, federal workers, how do you use Reddit as a search tool? So I'm going to try something here. God, I don't know.
I mean, you could try it, but I don't use Reddit as a search tool per se.
Oh, you don't?
I mean, okay, so I guess that's not entirely true.
What do you do for Reddit? If I were to pull up Reddit right now, could you walk me through what you do?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. So really what I'm looking for is I'm looking for subreddits of various technologies, right? So there's a subreddit for everything. There's a subreddit for Kubernetes. There's a subreddit for C Sharp. There's a subreddit for Java. There's a subreddit for Python. There's a subreddit for all of these, different technologies that people use, right?
Revit, REVIT?
RE.
Or Reddit, REDDIT.
That. REDDIT.
Yeah, Eric, Reddit. Yeah. So there are these subgroups. So are you Googling the subreddit groups, or are you going into Reddit itself to find this group? That's why I kind of want to show the audience. I mean, if you could, can we try it?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, hold on. Let me get Let me see if I can do this here. Whoops, it's not a Refit. So just go to reddit.com, just regular reddit.com.
Yeah, so what I do is if you're going to do it on your screen, I just typed in reddit.com/r/Kubernetes, and that's
/r/what?
Kubernetes. So that's Kubernetes.
What are Kubernetes?
No. So this has to do with containers, Docker container. Okay, anyways, so it's some obscure technology. So without
I'm not supposed to ask detailed questions. Very sorry.
It's fine. It's just, I don't want to spend the time doing it. I mean, there's probably recruiters on this call that aren't technical recruiters, but I mean, there's literally subreddits for everything, right? And I kind of discovered this a few years ago. And this is really not just with technology, but I mean, literally everything. Like, so if you think of like the most obscure things like basket weaving, I'm sure there's a forum of people that do basket weaving where they all talk to each other, right? So one of the things that I like is I do a lot of with aquariums. So this is a freshwater tank, but I also have a really big saltwater tank in the other room. So there's forums aside from Reddit, and then there's subforums on Reddit. So Reddit is kind of like and I'm sure people who know who Reddit are going to judge me based on my definition of Reddit. But so Reddit is like a really large overarching site where people of all kinds of interests can go to, and then you can set up subreddits where people can participate in discussions about anything. So it's like
discussion. It's almost like the specialized LinkedIn groups or the specialized GitHub or Stack Overflow groups.
Yeah, so it's more like it's those groups within LinkedIn. Those would be the subreddits. Reddit is like LinkedIn itself, in that it's the overarching product of all of the other groups. Does that make sense?
Yes. Sorry, I'm putting out the. I was trying to do the link. As Bobby Sue says, she goes, "No judgment here." She doesn't like you. No, it's not true. She didn't say that. She goes, "You're spot on." How about that? You got one right, Dan.
All right.
Yeah, you're 1 for 1. Just kidding. So, but I'm just kind of looking through it. Download CloudBees Jenkins Extra, so you can download these types Magellix Kubernetes pattern series. I mean, I'd have to look up what Kubernetes is, but I guess you could probably just do a search on Reddit for different subgroups, right?
Yes, exactly. So you could search for any technology that you're recruiting for, or anything that you're recruiting for. I mean, I'm sure there's a subreddit for CPAs, right? Or what does she say? TCSS. Anyways, I mean, so they're not always abundantly obvious. So sometimes you have to kind of research a little bit. But once you find those subreddits, then you can start to kind of look at the conversations that are going on, right?
Absolutely. So
then in your reach out, you can say something along the lines of, "Hey, I don't know what subreddits you follow, but I saw this on the Kubernetes subreddit, right? And that was really interesting to me." And then that person will, like, if that person saw that post, it's going to immediately connect them with you, right? They're going to be like, "Oh yeah, I saw that post too." You know what I mean? And so now that doesn't guarantee a response, but your odds go up exponentially.
Well, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm looking at, you can set up a cluster, you contribute to the docs. There's even a way to connect to GitHub from Reddit on that Kubernetes site, and there's blogs as well. So, I mean, that seems like there's a treasure trove of information that's out there.
Yeah.
People, ask our Kubernetes, "What are you working on this week?" And 2 people commented, if it pulls it up here, well, there's nothing there. Someone saying, "I'm trying to get a cert manager to issue let's encrypt certs to my Helm chart." Sure you are, buddy.
It's weird stuff, right?
Yeah, it's all it speaks a much different language, but I think that's what. So Gabriel Leal asked, "Is there a Reddit for authors?" Yeah, you would have to.
A Reddit for what?
Authors. He's an author. He writes. He's an amazing author.
Yeah. I would say r/writers, one of the things that I see a lot. What was his name? I missed that. Sorry.
Gabriel. Yeah.
Gabriel, one of the things that I see a lot is people will give you like writing prompts. I think it's r/writing prompts. And so they'll like give you a scenario like, the world is ending and there's only 100 people left to survive. How do you decide, who survives? Like just arbitrary stuff like that. That actually ends up being pretty cool if you're into creative writing. You can kind of take somebody else's topic and write a little short story on it. So there's.
No, so I did /writing, r/writing.
Mhm.
Um, and Gabriel, there's 1.1 million members, 787 online right now.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm sure if you just do keyword searches, I mean, imagine who you can. Yeah, Bobby Sue says r/writers. So I
Mhm.
mean, that's Reddit's become a tool. Um, people are now. Have you tried recruiting on TikTok yet, or no?
I haven't. No, I've heard people talk about that. So,
Yeah,
okay, so here's the thing, right? Is that there are certain things, and you go to these conferences and people talk about these obscure ways to find talent, and I think they're great, right?
right.
That's after you've done everything else, right? You don't want to use these obscure things as the first things that you
Yeah,
go to.
because it's a time suck.
Man, you can get lost in the rabbit hole of Reddit. You can get lost in the rabbit hole of GitHub. You can get lost in the rabbit holes everywhere, right?
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, you still have to produce, right? And if you can find quality candidates elsewhere that are, that aren't as niche, right, or where the sites aren't as niche, then of course, a lot of times when I go to the recruiting conferences and people are talking about sourcing, I just want to stand up and I just want to say, the other thing that you can do is pick up the phone, right?
imagine.
Because I feel like
What's
nobody
that?
does that anymore. Now, I do understand that a lot of people would prefer email to phone calls now. I totally get that. But I mean, let's not forget the way that we used to recruit in lieu of, let's not throw it out with the new way of recruiting. Let's integrate it with the new way of recruiting.
Well, and I think I think part of the problem is that technology has made our jobs so easy for us that you were around when you were working for Pennies and some other companies.
Yeah.
We still had we had internet, but it wasn't as advanced. We didn't really have LinkedIn back then. We didn't have Facebook. It was still the old-fashioned send us your resume. And now you've got these fantastic tools that are out there, but I think it could be contributing to our laziness. And
Yeah.
I would say that you're absolutely right that you've got to pick up the phone,
Hmm.
and you've got to do research on candidates so that when you're reaching out to somebody, especially like a diamond type candidate and I love that, by the way, you're sending targeted messaging to your diamond candidates. You better know something about them by reviewing their profiles. And I mean that can take up time too, but what's nice is we have the information that we need to do research and to find the right people. So we've got those tools, but wouldn't you think that it's made us lazy?
Oh yeah, and to be frank, the best recruiters are lazy, right? Because they figure out ways to automate things. So there's good lazy and there's bad lazy, right? Just like there's good debt and there's bad debt, right? Good lazy is people like Michael Cohen, right? Batman. He has so many things in automation that it eliminates the need for him to spend time doing the menial minutia tasks of data management, right? And he can spend more time focused on finding, researching the real quality as opposed to like, so for instance, his whole almost his entire sourcing, like the initial finding of the candidates is automated because he's done it so many times that he can just go and copy paste the same strings in a different location, right?
Right.
So he spends less time doing that and he can spend more time, really finding which candidates are the best candidates for the role.
Right. But it's nothing that happens overnight. Now I don't,
No, it's not.
I mean, unless you're Dean DaCosta or Mike
Yeah,
Cohen who
right.
don't sleep very
Absolutely.
much. I mean,
Absolutely.
like when I do my research, I'm doing it like on companies and things like that. I'm not doing that during the day while I'm recruiting.
Yeah.
If I want to learn how to recruit using a new technology, I'm going to do that on my own time at night. Um, and then try it out the next day. And that's the other thing, because we can talk about, you know, how much we feel like we're so busy, but yet we're caught in a trap of, that time suck of, being on LinkedIn or being in email, and we think we're productive and we're not. I know people that only look at their email twice a day,
Hmm.
which it would drive me batty. I mean, I can do
Yeah.
it if I had
How
to.
many times have you gotten done with the day and been like, man, I was so busy today? And then you look back and you go, I didn't get anything done today. Like, I mean, that happens to me.
It happens. Well, I think it happens to everybody because look, we're not going to be 100% every single day.
Mhm.
We It's hard to show up 100% every single day. We try. We
Right.
believe we're going to do it, but in the world of recruiting, yeah, you're talking to different people and you're trying to figure out different strategies to find the right people, but it can be monotonous at times. And so I think if you mix up how you go about planning your day. Like I set a certain aside time for prospecting. I set aside a certain time for connecting with people I know, doing this show, engaging on LinkedIn and doing videos and doing posts. Um, I think if you can time your day out on your calendar and live by that and get into a routine, a habit of living in that routine for, let's say, a week,
Yeah.
and
It's
then excuse me, and then go to another week and do
yeah.
it for the next week, I think you're going to get yourself in a better pattern, but you're still going to have bad days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean it makes a huge impact, right? And I try to map out. I think I have like 2 hours blocked off, like at the first thing in the morning to review candidate applicants and to go through my LinkedIn messages and that sort of thing. So I mean, yeah, I mean it makes a substantial impact to not get bogged down in the busy work, right? And that's why I go back to the best recruiters are lazy recruiters because they find ways to automate that or they create a system that they take care of that stuff at a certain part of their day, so it's not eating up the entire day.
Well, wait, so you're saying the best recruiters are lazy recruiters?
To a degree, if they're doing the automation correctly, yes. Now,
Okay, let's be honest.
talk about
Hold on, hold on,
yeah,
hold on.
yeah, yeah,
Let's be honest.
sure.
They aren't doing that, Dan. There's no way they're
Who's
doing
not
that.
doing that? Who's not doing that?
The lazy recruiters are not taking the time to automate. I'm saying that technology is part of the reason we've become lazy, but
Mhm.
there's still the relationship side to recruiting of building out your what's it called, your relationships with your hiring managers, understanding the business, understanding what the hiring manager is looking for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I talked about it, just like there's good debt and bad debt, there's good lazy and bad lazy, right? So now the bad lazy, yes, they're not doing any of what we're talking about, right?
Correct.
They're just lazy for the sake of being lazy, right? They're on Facebook, they're on LinkedIn, and they say, oh yeah, I'm looking for candidates, right? But in reality, they're just checking people's statuses that aren't relevant, to what they're doing, right?
Right. And each of the platforms change so much. Even on LinkedIn, do you remember the old days how you'd be able to tell how that someone was open to new opportunities, and they something as simple as that.
That's still a thing.
I have not. Maybe I need to go back and look. I've not
Well,
seen
it
that
is on LinkedIn Recruiter. I don't know if it is like in the public domain.
on the free. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think so because I had a paid LinkedIn search and I've gotten off of that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
um, so one of the things I know you wanted to talk about, is candidates versus applicants, and really, I think a lot of people on here that are on live and people that would watch us that are recruiters would certainly, at least they should understand the difference. But what's your take on that?
Yeah. So people are constantly talking about the candidate experience. And I think a lot of times recruiters and talent acquisition professionals are overwhelmed by the idea of every person having a great candidate experience, right? So it's important to understand the difference between applicants and candidates. Every applicant that applies to your company is not going to have a great experience. It's impossible, right? One of my favorite quotes is stop trying to make everyone happy. You're not coffee, right? So, so the difference between a candidate and an applicant is just someone who's applied for the job arbitrarily. It could be, they applied to, um, they applied to a network engineer job, but they're actually a software developer. Well, that's not a candidate. That's an applicant, right?
Right.
A candidate is someone that you've, just briefly qualified based on their profile against your role, or someone that you've spoken with and qualified for your role. That is a candidate, right? As soon as you've spoken with that person on the phone, as soon as they've taken time out of their day, it is then your responsibility to make sure that that candidate has a good experience, right? Because once you connect with that person, that's on you. I mean, that is then your responsibility
As the recruiter.
as the recruiter. Correct.
I agree with you 100%. And, you know, there's always this talk, I know you and I did something back in December at TalentNet on a panel and where we talked about improving candidate engagement and how do you avoid ghosting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. Both sides are pointing the finger at each other.
Yeah.
Man,
We got into this a little bit at TalentNet, right? And Toyota, the Toyota TalentNet that just passed. So, and this is something that I thought about after our conversation, and that is everyone complains about ghosting. So you've got recruiters that complain about ghosting. You've got candidates that complain about ghosting, and then you've got hiring managers that complain about ghosting, and then everyone else in between in that process, in the recruitment process, right?
Right.
And it's silly, right? Because everyone complains about it, but everyone does it, right? And when I say everyone, I mean everyone in those buckets, right?
Everyone.
I'm not saying that you, Michael Goldberg, do that, right? So there's a couple of things that I do to help myself, because I never intentionally ghost somebody unless they're like sending me death threats or something like that. But I've only had that happen a couple times.
You have not.
Oh yeah, early in my career I did.
Death threats?
Yeah, I mean it's just a disgruntled guy, right? So anyways, so I can get.
Whoa, you can't just bypass. Like, what did this person say? Sorry, this is interesting to the audience.
Sure.
Has anybody, if you're watching, or you're watching this live, has anybody received a death threat as a recruiter? So go on. How did this? So I mean, obviously,
market this was in an employer market. So you got a candidate market and you got an employer, meaning unemployment was very high at the time. Okay,
just in 2011 or something, 9, 10.
Before that, yeah, like 2008. So people were very desperate for work.
Right. Oh, sure.
So I had a candidate that interviewed with me. I talked to him. I enjoyed the conversation. I told him that I thought he would do well in the role. It was a low-level technical support position. I sent him over to the hiring manager. The hiring manager did not like him. I gave him that feedback, and then he did one of these things where he said, "Oh, well, no, they're wrong. I can do." So there are times, and I'll get into this a little bit more as well when I talk about DQing people, just letting people know while you're on the phone with them that they're not a fit for the role, right?
Right.
So sometimes you'll get people that will kind of argue the point, right? And I'm trying to think of a good way to. Anyways, it's so situational, right? It just depends on the call. But anyway, so long story short, it was so weird, but like over the course of time, like I let him know that we weren't going to be moving forward, and he kept on emailing me and saying, "Hey, did you check with the hiring manager about what I said?" And I'd say, yes, I spoke with the hiring manager, but she still doesn't think that you'd be a fit for the role, And then just it was like I think it was like every 2 days or 3 days he'd email me again, and then he'd call me, and then he'd, it was a very, very odd thing, right? So anyway, eventually he was like, I can't believe you. You're a scam artist, and if I ever see you, I'll kill you. And I mean, it's just this.
Nice.
It was so ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't. there wasn't anything credible to it, other than the fact that he had my picture and my phone number and my email address, right? So yeah, it was a very weird thing.
That's
And then,
freaky. Hey,
yeah.
so all right, so I get it. So here's a question from Bobby Sue. She goes, "How do you manage your outreach campaigns so you are not accidentally ghosting?" That's a really good question.
Manager outreach and can't. I don't understand. How would you accidentally
How
ghost
do
me?
you manage your outreach campaign so you're not accidentally ghosting? In other words, what are you doing to stay on top of candidates where the hiring manager may be taking an inordinate amount of time to make a decision, right? We all run into that. Um, I know that I try to keep in touch with my candidates at least once a week. Give them an update, whether it's by email or phone, just so they know. I don't
Yeah.
know if you can create a campaign, Bobby Sue. I think that might be something you
I
could
don't know
do.
if that's her question. I can address that, but I think her question is like the initial outreach to a big list of candidates, and how do you stop from ghosting that? Well, I mean, naturally, wherever you outreach those candidates, whether it's LinkedIn, like LinkedIn messages or emails, you're always going to get a response. Now, if you're saying that there's just an overwhelming response to your messages, then I envy whatever role you're recruiting for. But suffice to say, I mean, I try to go through those messages. Now, there have been times where I have to kind of so for instance, some of the applicants on some of the roles, sometimes I have support with that, which is great, but I
Mhm.
don't always have that. But when I have support with that, then I'll have some people kind of go into the ATS and kind of look at the candidates for me, right?
Right.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Bobby Sue, let us know if we got that right. So
Now,
we're
your
kind of we're sorry. Go on. We've got about probably 5 more minutes. So go
okay.
ahead and what's your finishing? What's your
I was
thought there?
going to say to your question, making sure. So one thing that I like to do is I like to tell the candidates, like, this is a two-way street, right? My intention is never to ghost anyone, but I'm human, and so sometimes I don't always remember to get back to a candidate, or I run out of time at the end of the day. So you have my email, you have my phone number. Send me a postcard, send me smoke signals, whatever the case may be. I will not think less of you as a candidate if you want to know your status in the process, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I'm a very transparent person. I don't believe in the smoke and mirrors. I don't believe in stringing people along. I just sometimes to a fault.
Yeah.
I'm transparent, right?
No. Well, no. But it's a good quality to have because I know where you're going with this. Um, I assume that you tell your candidates right then and there if they're not qualified, what are you waiting for? Just tell them.
Right.
At least they have finality,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And the way I do that is I say, hey, look, John, there's no question that you have significant experience in this industry, and and I love your work with X, Y, and Z. But in this situation, the hiring manager has been really specific that they're focused on experience with this technology, and
Yeah.
they're looking for someone who can hit the ground running with that technology. And normally, I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe 8 times out of 10, they say, you know what, you're right, I don't have experience with that. And maybe that's something that I can focus on in the future. 2 out of 10 times they'll say, that's not really that big of a deal. I can come up to speed on that. And I'll say, look, I have no question that you can, but I mean, my hands are tied. The hiring manager wants this skill set. You know what I mean? If something changes, I'm more than happy to reach out and let you know. But
Mhm.
in all inevitability, it's probably going to stay the same. And usually people are pretty receptive to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So
So good follow up question from Bobby Sue. How often should a candidate follow up to maintain a relationship with you as a recruiter for future roles if they didn't get the role they originally applied to?
That's a great question. I would say the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but you also don't want to, be messaging too much. I would say once a month is probably not too much. But as a candidate, you should also take the initiative to go out to the company's website and see if anything that matches your profile comes up before you reach out to that recruiter, right? I
Yeah.
don't want blanket emails from 50 candidates saying, "Hey, do you have anything for me?"
Right.
Because frankly, I'm going to have to go remember who you are. I'm going to have to go back to your profile. I'm going to have to remember what you were, applying for, right? Now, if you message me and say, hey, this is John, we spoke 2 weeks ago about X role, I just saw Y role posted. Do you think I would be a fit for that role? And that's going to, stand out like so much better than most of the messaging that you get, right?
Yeah. So Maria Foley commented, and thank you. She goes, you mentioned that you received a death threat. How awful! Back in 2008, when people were desperate for a job, anyone who is unemployed, and especially when they have a family to support, are desperate to get a new job. It may not be a widespread problem in the nation, re unemployment, but as someone who has experienced unemployment, it is difficult to find a job that is in your field and offers similar benefits. Your mortgage company still wants full payment on time. Completely agree, Maria. But I think what we're trying to say here is, if it's not a match in terms of skill sets, in terms of culture, whatever the reason may be, the recruiters have the opportunity to uh, to help you out as much as they can, but they're limited to the jobs that they have. And I get it. I mean, look, I've been unemployed. Dan, you've been unemployed, have you not?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest drum that I beat as a recruiter with candidates is looking for a job sucks, especially when you don't have a job. I've been there. I know. A lot of times I feel embarrassed when I don't have a job and I'm looking for a job, and that's silly. Just because you're not currently working doesn't mean your value is any less, right? It just means you haven't found the opportunity that speaks to you. You just haven't found a fit. So I totally understand where you're coming from. And to be frank, at the time, it might have rattled me a little bit. But I mean, I understood where he was coming from. He needed to feed his family. I totally get that. And I'll never, of course, I'll begrudge someone for a death threat, but I'll never begrudge someone for being adamant about needing to find a role, right? And that's
Yeah.
really that's if I could speak to every recruiter in the world, the one thing that I would say is you have to approach every candidate with empathy. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to remember what it feels like to not have a job or to have a job and be looking for another job, right? It's so stressful.
Exactly. And it's, I think the one thing where, and I'd say this is any industry or any position, but I wish there was a way that, there was a way of communicating it. If we received a resume of someone that wasn't a fit for our organization, but could help somebody out in a way, so that was more of an, of course you get your Facebook groups and LinkedIn and all that, and that's fine. But to put together a really similar network, similar to LinkedIn, that focuses just on recruiting, where we can share resumes of people, what their profiles are, they're open to relocation. That would be so helpful, because I think, but if you're working on a recruiting team, and I think this is where it starts, the one area where they really fall down is there's not a lot of communicating amongst the recruiters about, hey, does anybody have anybody with these skills? I'm not having any luck. And for you as the good recruiter to go, yeah, hey, I've got somebody, and vice versa, right? So I think that that's what we need to do, more sharing of profiles. And Maria, we definitely understand you, and feel free to reach out to myself or Dan. Let's see how um, we can help you out if you're still looking for work. But this isn't a pep talk. This is reality. You're still Maria Foley, the person who has the experience and the skill sets. Don't put yourself in a bucket or compare yourself to others, because that's not going to help you.
Nope.
Um,
Nope.
it's getting out there. It's networking. It is. It's not just sitting behind your desk and on your laptop or desktop or your phone and applying for jobs. That doesn't do it anymore. That's not a job search. Your job search is doing some of that, maybe 10% of the time, but networking, attending meetup events, different community events, talking with family and friends is such a lot of people don't do that because they're unemployed. They feel kind of like the black sheep of the family, and you shouldn't. I mean, right, Dan? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, of course. I mean, everybody's been there. Everybody's been in the situation you are. I mean, obviously, everyone's situation is different for that individual, right? But everyone has been out of work. Everyone has been looking for a job. So and this, I'm telling this to myself just as much as anybody who's watching. There's no reason to be embarrassed. Like it's just one of the things in life, and you should be encouraged about the new opportunities, or the chance for something new, and you just got to keep pushing through, right? And then
Absolutely.
and then reach out to your close friends when you're struggling, right? Or reach out to Mike. He's ready to help. So
Mike who? Michael, you mean?
Goldberg. Yeah, Mike Goldberg.
Michael Goldberg. Thank you. Well, and Dan, you were a big help the other day, and I really appreciate it because look, as an entrepreneur, you have your down days. It's not an easy ride. Technically, they'd say, well, oh, you're a consultant, oh, so you're unemployed.
Yeah,
That's the joke, but it isn't a joke because there's so much to be done in this space. So, all right, so quick rapid fire questions here as
sure.
we collaborate. Um, so, you ready?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right. Favorite food?
Crawfish etouffee.
Ooh. Favorite vacation spot?
It's actually really boring. It's the hill country, Wimberley, Texas.
Wimberley, Texas. All right. Recruiters are lazy. Yes or no?
We discussed this. Yes and no. Yeah,
Uh,
I would say yes. Yeah.
Cop out, cop out, cop out. All right. Favorite movie?
Probably. Man, it's been so long since I've been a big movie guy, but probably A River Runs Through It.
Oh, Brad Pitt. Very nice. Favorite quote?
So there's I kind of have two. So one is a Mark Twain quote that I like a lot. It's giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I know it because I've done it 1,000 times. And then the other one is the one that I mentioned earlier, which is stop trying to make everyone happy. You're not coffee.
Right. And coffee doesn't necessarily make everybody happy.
Right. Yeah.
Last question. What impact do you want to make on the recruiting industry in 2020?
So again, I touched on this a little bit, right? But I want to remind recruiters to think back to what it felt like to be a job seeker, and just remember what that process was in your head. And if you had a good experience, then great. Like try to replicate that, right? And if you had a bad experience, then make sure you're not continuing that pattern because it's horrible, right? It's just whether it's a good job market or a bad job market for candidates, it doesn't change the fact that the candidate experience is really relevant to everyone, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I want more recruiters to have transparency with their candidates, right? And not treat their interviews like interrogations. It's good to coach people that you're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing you. This is a conversation, it's not an interrogation. And if you find yourself interrogating candidates, you might want to rethink the way you're doing things.
I love it. I love it. Dan, you've been an excellent, excellent guest. Um, a shout out, a couple of birthday wishes to three people I know, actually all born on this day. The most important, my son, Henry, who has turned 22. Happy birthday. I love you.
Awesome.
My friend Cindy Dale, who I don't know how old she is, and she probably wouldn't want me saying. And then my friend Casey Montgomery, happy birthday. All good wishes for many good things to come in 2020 and beyond. And Dan, it's been a pleasure.
Always.
And I'm going to hit end broadcast here, but you'll still be on. So we'll kind of wrap up that way. So thanks for everybody. Feel free to share this with the people. Ask some more questions along the way. Bobby Sue, you were amazing today. Maria Foley, shout out. Feel free to give us a call. We're happy to help you. Vidya, Aka, who else we got? Gabriel, Mark Gaywith. Or Gawith, sorry if I'm chopping that up. Dr. Ian Levine from the Cayman Islands, my favorite vacation spot. Hello. And we'll talk to you next week, same time. We've got a great guest. I can't remember who's joining us next. Oh, Seth McCauley, who's an HR. He's the head of HR for a big organization. So we're going to bring in my first corporate HR guest. It's been
Nice.
recruiters up to this morning.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again, and peace out, everybody.